Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Today we want to talk about what it means to be a Judaizer. So, let's jump right to it with Galatians chapter 1, verse 13. For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many Jews of my own age, and was extremely zealous for the traditions of my fathers. Okay, so what is a Judaizer? Well, I suppose that depends on who you ask. Seriously. But I think we would all agree that a Judaizer is one who tries to get others to walk in Judaism. So now the question is, well, what is Judaism? Again, it would most likely depend on, who you ask. So let's use this verse as a foundation, if you will, for getting started with a definition for Judaism, shall we? By this verse, we see Judaism is what Paul identified himself with. Next, we see while in Judaism, Paul persecuted the church. So it could seem that Judaism opposes the faith. Next, we see that Paul was truly dedicated to Judaism. And lastly, we see Paul was extremely zealous for the traditions of his fathers. This could seem to have been fed by Judaism itself. Many believe that Judaism holds to the law of Moses, that being the Torah. And while it may play an element in their faith, it truly isn't the heart of what they pursue, because the heart of what they pursue is truly the traditions that have been passed down by their previous leaders. That being holding on to traditions more than the Torah. And sometimes, and even many cases, you'll find where they'll set those traditions higher, or at least at an equal level to that of the Torah. Now, according to Acts 26, verse 5, and Philippians 3:5, we know Paul was a Pharisee. Now, while everybody has their opinions, it's possible that Judaism is the strict sect of the Pharisees that Paul was referring to in Acts 26:5. Many believe that the Pharisees followed the law of Moses. In fact, that's why they'll say that Yeshua was constantly correcting them, because they believe that the Pharisees followed the law. Therefore, that's why Yeshua was constantly correcting them, saying, look, hey, you know what? This isn't needed anymore. There's a new way, or something to that nature, if you will. Basically, they're saying that, the Pharisees follow the law, and Yeshua came to say, look, we don't have to do that anymore, and that's why Yeshua was correcting them. But the problem here is that the Pharisees didn't follow the law. They followed their own man-made traditions that was passed down to them over and over again, which is why I find it's kind of odd that, many times I've been called a Pharisee or a Judaizer, because I follow the law, or at least pursue the law, if you will, which is funny because the Judaizers, those who are in Judaism, and those who are Pharisees, they didn't follow the law. But yet that's why I'm called a Pharisee or a Sadducee. You see the irony? The thing is, the general church population believes that the Pharisees follow the law to the nth degree, and that those in Judaism, they follow the law to the nth degree, when in reality, we know that is not true. Yeshua reprimanded the Pharisees and the teachers of the law on multiple occasions. And on almost every single one of those occasions, you'll find that it was because, that being Yeshua reprimanding them, was because they were actually holding on to their own teachings and traditions that had been passed down to them. They were holding on to those and completely rejecting the law. That was why he reprimanded them, was because they weren't following the Torah, because they weren't following what Moses wrote, which is completely opposite of what many others believe. But again, they weren't following the law. They weren't following the Torah, and that is why Yeshua reprimanded them. Mark chapter 7. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to the traditions of men. And he said to them, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death. But you say that if a man says to his father or mother, whatever help you might otherwise have received of me is Corban, that is, a gift devoted to God. Then you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother. Thus, you nullify the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down. And you do many things like that. Okay, so it's obvious here that the Pharisees did not pursue the Torah. They did not follow the Torah. Okay, they only pursued the teachings that had been passed down to them from all their previous leaders, if you will. Now, consider what Yeshua said to his disciples about the Pharisees and teachers of the law. Matthew 23. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So, you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. Yeshua just told his disciples to obey what the Pharisees and teachers of the law teach. Well, what did they teach? They taught the law. Okay? So, but he told them, don't do what they do, which is what? Not following the law. They followed their own ways. Again, Yeshua is basically calling these guys hypocrites. Okay? I mean, we can't avoid the fact he's calling them hypocrite. He says, don't do what they do what they teach. That being the law. They sat in Moses' seat. They read the law. They taught the law. They just weren't following it. Yeshua's calling them hypocrites. All right. Now then, in the same chapter, he calls them blind guides and even fools. It's also interesting to note how the Pharisees were all about the tithe. Yet, somehow, some way, they found a way to belittle the rest of the law. Not that uncommon from what you see in churches today. Matthew chapter 23 as well. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain at a gnat, but swallow a camel. So they stressed the tithe, yet they reasoned away following the other matters of the law, which Yeshua even called more important matters of the law, mind you. You know, again, it's like, do you not see the parallel with what we see in churches today? You don't have to follow the law, but you got to keep tithing. There's a parallel there. Can we not at least admit there's some kind of a parallel there where it's all about following the law and the element of, giving the tithe, but the other stuff, no, that doesn't apply today. There's a parallel. We're seeing the same principle there as we see today. Now, compare what Yeshua said to his disciples about their righteousness. Matthew chapter 5, verse 20. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. I want to leave this verse up here just for a minute. Folks, this is big. Remember, the Pharisees taught the law, but they didn't practice it. This verse tells us the Pharisees' righteousness was not of Yahweh's. It also tells us that the Pharisees were not going to enter into the kingdom of heaven, and if the disciples didn't do better than the Pharisees, they wouldn't enter either. Why? Because the Pharisees were pursuing a righteousness that was created by man and not that which came from Yahweh. Look at John chapter 7. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet not one of you keeps the law. So the Pharisees were given the law, but they didn't keep the law. So to be in Judaism or to be Pharisaical is to be one who does not keep the law, but pursues another righteousness. Now look at Matthew chapter 5 one more time. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, leaving this verse up, what is Yeshua telling us here? He's telling us that unless we are pursuing the righteousness that the Father gave us, we are endangering ourselves from not entering the kingdom like the Pharisees. As I've said before, this is not a works-based salvation. It's a proof-based salvation. Look at what James said in James chapter 2. In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by what I do. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. Now, consider what he said just 5 verses later. James chapter 2, verse 24. You see that a person is justified by what he does and not by faith alone. As I've said before, faith is the root and obedience is the fruit. The fruit is the proof of the faith that you are living out. The fruit is what shows what is planted within you. It's supposed to be the eternal word that is planted within us. That is the seed that is supposed to be planted within our heart. And that which is planted in our heart should and actually will eventually work its way out into the fruit. Yet we see the Pharisees only preached the word. They didn't live it out, as Yeshua said in Matthew 23. Okay, now lastly, we know that Matthew 23 is nearing the end of Yeshua's earthly ministry. And here we see Yeshua telling his disciples to follow what Moses gave, the law, the Torah. Remember, this is the end of his ministry, okay? If anything, if his life, if his ministry was all about doing away with the Torah, okay, doing away with it, and now there's a new way to follow, why, here at the end of his ministry, is he now telling them, hey, you follow what they preach. Don't do what they do, but follow what they preach, and that being the law, what Moses gave, okay? I just want to make that clear that it wouldn't make sense that if his whole life, his whole ministry was there to do away with the Torah, and here he is now at the end of his ministry telling his disciples, hey guys, you need to, keep following this. This is what he gave. This is what Yahweh gave. This is your instructions for life. I mean, think about it just for a moment. If his life was truly, and his ministry was truly all about doing away with the law, showing a new way to follow, if you will, would he really say this? Would he tell his? Wouldn't he tell his disciples, okay, guys, look, these guys have been, teaching this the law of Moses, the Torah, but now I'm going to tell you that I'm going to be dying here real soon, and this is all going to be done away with, so you don't have to worry about this anymore. Start just following love. I mean, think about that. If that is what his life was truly all about, wouldn't he have made it that blatant? But yet here we see the opposite blatant being given, telling his disciples, follow Moses, follow the law that Moses gave. That's what he said. I just feel that can't be underscored enough. Knowing that the Pharisees and those in Judaism didn't follow the Torah, but rather that they followed the teachings passed down to them. I have a question. Who would be the Pharisees and Judaizers, if you will, today in the eyes of Yeshua? Think about this for a second. Who would be the ones that Yeshua would call the Pharisees? That he talked to the Pharisees in some strong language back then. Why? Because they didn't follow the Torah. They didn't follow it. They followed their man-made ways. And I'm sure those man-made ways were well-intentions, okay, good intentions. I'm not saying that all of it was bad, but you can't elevate that above the Torah is the element. And that's what Yeshua slammed them for many a times. Now, that being said, who today would be considered the Pharisees? who would be considered those in Judaism, the Judaizers, if you will? Would it be those who show their love for God, Yahweh, by pursuing the Torah, by pursuing what Moses gave, and that how Yeshua himself lived out? Would it be those, or would it be those who forsake the law today and for the mere sake of pursuing what they have been taught, what have been passed down from all their previous preachers before then? Who truly parallels the Pharisees and Sadducees today as then? Does that make sense? I mean, it's like, who today is walking in the shoes of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the teachers of the law and those who walked in Judaism? Who today is following in those shoes? It's those who are rejecting the Torah, who are saying, you know what, it's not needed today. Well, yeah, we'll keep the tithe, but we don't need the rest of it. Okay. Does that not make sense? Those are the ones who are truly doing this? I guess all I'm asking is, please use caution when you call somebody a Pharisee or a Judaizer, because you might inadvertently be actually referring to yourself. And I truly pray that's not the case. If you are here today, you're watching this video, and you're saying all these people who are following the laws is crazy, nuts, whatever, okay? Please rethink this through, okay? Those who Yeshua reprimanded throughout his whole ministry were those who did not follow the Torah. And at the end of his ministry, he told his very disciples, those who were right side by side with him, he told them, follow what is being taught from the seat of Moses, meaning the law, the Torah. Surely that has to mean something. There are many verses throughout the New Testament, I agree, that can be very confusing. But we have to remember Yahweh's word is eternal. I've made many teachings, and I guess I don't want to, this can go on forever. So here's the thing. Follow Yeshua. Do what he told his disciples. If you really want to be his disciple, follow what he told his disciples. Please consider this. Don't just throw this teaching off to the side. Think about this. Pray about this. And that's the wrapping up of this teaching here. That's truly all I have. So please, indeed, think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, shalom.